Have you ever heard of the French statesman who basically survived a duel to the death, 2 bombings, wounds of an assassin, and a near-fatal automobile accident? How about that? Or the 18th century French political figure who masqueraded as a woman to carry out his plans of intrigue, or another, even before that, French statesman who basically won his office by beating King Louis XIV playing billiards. Crazy. For answers to these and more, we are going to continue into our 50th episode, by the way. This is our 1-year anniversary and episode number 50. We did British and Irish statesmen last week. This week, we're going to do European statesmen. We may go on to foreign statesmen, except European, and then maybe get into rulers. I got rulers, dictators, and some stuff about Iran, Persia, as it was known at the time, and Turkey, and so on. We'll just kind of take it and see how far we go, but we're going to start with European statesmen except British and Irish. Welcome back. This is Jeff Hicks, curator of the Strange As It Seems archives and grandnephew of John Hicks, who created Strange As It Seems back in the late 1920s. Before I dive in, I'd love to ask, please hit the bell to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, follow if you like content like this, stories of the strange and unusual, a little bit of an escape from the doom scrolling of the events of today, just to take a break and go back into some fascinating knowledge. Some of it you might know, some of it kind of lost in the ages that I'm bringing back. A lot of it's just as fascinating to me as it is for you. So let's dive in. I'll start with the era of John Hicks, as I usually do. Let's get into 1932. Actually, there's a whole bunch on this French statesman, Paul Dumas. He was the 13th president of France, was elected May 13th of 1931. Apparently he died 13 hours after he was wounded by an assassin. Crazy, but really amazing. Apparently a lot of what John Hicks got, he got from the Time magazine Foreign News. And I have tons of articles in here that apparently John Hicks read quite a bit to get all this information. But Paul Dumas, kind of amazing. And there's another one here from 1935. He was the martyred president of France. And apparently he lost 4 sons in the World War. How about that? This is obviously before we knew there was going to be a second World War and, God forbid, a third, with the events of what's going on today. But what a beautiful full-page article here in the world of today. It's the Pittsburgh Press. We've got a huge dirigible, which we've done several on. And you can see here, see page 16 for Strange As It Seems. Kind of amazing. This is the paper, the Pittsburgh Press, that Strange As It Seems appeared on. But here's a full page on Paul Dumas. Unmarried men are cowards, so says 74-year-old French president. This was prior to his being assassinated. Kind of amazing. Never smoked, never drank, never wasted an hour. Paul Dumas, president of France, who stresses old-fashioned ideals in a hectic post-war world. Leisure and pleasure, gross morals and joys were alone the fashions, said President Dumas after observing post-war France, which sends gay mid-90s through the boulevard in carnival costume like this in holidays. So apparently he was kind of a return to conservatism, but really fascinating. Didn't know much about him. Another one of these I'd love to frame, but God knows I don't have enough walls to frame all this amazing content. But, I might put some of these up in a marketplace and see if people want some of these to be framed. Here's another amazing, here after the French president who was killed. Here's Monsieur the No Can Be Killed. How about this one? Indo-Chinese gave this title to the ex-premier Sarraut of France after he survived a duel to the death, 2 bombings, wounds of an assassin, and a near-fatal automobile accident, once again from the Foreign News of Time magazine. So many amazing stories in here just from the time at which Strange as It Seems was running. And this was through World War I, through World War II, even into the Korean War in the 1950s with my Grandma Chamberlain's era. But here's another. The president of Czechoslovakia, Edvard Beneš. Beneš, I don't know how you pronounce many of these, so please forgive me for massacring these names. I don't have time to look them all up. But he used 7 different aliases during the World War. Again, he was known as Spolny, Belsky, Berger, Novotny, Konog, Sicha, and LeBlanc. Edvard Beneš, or Beneš? Beneš. Oh, here it is, pronounced Beneš, president of Czechoslovakia. Amazing. Before and during the World War, Beneš operated on forged passports in the interest of establishing independence for Czechoslovakia and had to cross international frontiers with false papers. Once he was arrested in England, apparently, for using a false passport, but within 6 months he was officially signing passports for his country, the new country of Czechoslovakia. Strange as it seems. So that does it for the John Hicks era. There's a couple here too from the Ernest Hicks era. We have the families of all statesmen who are presented with orders and decorations by European governments apparently must return them when the statesmen die, except those containing diamonds. That's kind of fascinating. One more from the Ernest Hicks era. This was 1944 to 1948. Here's an interesting one. Here's the head of the Nazi Labor Front. How about this? This is in 1944, December of 1944, Dr. Robert Ley, L-E-Y, head of the Nazi Labor Front. He's often too drunk to talk when he receives foreign correspondence. He once wrecked a beer hall in Cologne and cracked a bottle over the head of a politician. His first act when appointed labor head was to order 32 Mercedes cars. Kind of interesting politician here. Too drunk to talk when he receives foreign correspondence, and probably the only dipsomaniac who was ever elevated to such a high post. He's literally soused to the gills most of the times and is frequently hospitalized due to complications brought on by too much liquor. What a character there, huh? Then we move on to the era of Elsie Hicks. Quite a few here. She kind of went back into history, so a lot of her, strange as it seems, on foreign or European statesmen outside of British and Irish. She went back to history. Here's a really mysterious one, and what a beautiful article here by Clement King about the Chevalier d'Eon. I think I'm pronouncing that right, masqueraded as a woman to carry out his plans of intrigue. He was maid of honor to Tsarina Elizabeth and once so charmed Louis XV that Madame de Pompadour raged, made his wife jealous. Crazy. French dragoon masqueraded most of his life as a beautiful woman at court. What a great article. What was he or she? The mystery of Chevalier d'Eon, dragoon, minister, plenipotentiary, and maid of honor to an empress. Fascinating article here. Another one that I'll probably post. There's a picture of him as a she. Quite attractive. Amazing. And that's the pic that was used for the drawing. Fascinating article and a fascinating statesman, I guess you will, that was also a spy. How about America's first fifth columnist? I hadn't heard of Citizen Genet. He was a French minister to the U.S. in 1793 to 94. Apparently used his office to incite America to war against England. Amazing. He formed democratic societies, in parentheses, throughout the U.S. to stir up rebellion against the Washington administration. That's pretty interesting. A before there was such a thing. Of course, this is at the time when fifth columnists were being talked about in the 1950s, right? All the communist attacks being made on people as communists. But here's the first fifth columnist. Here's an interesting one. Georges Clemenceau, the World War I premier. Again, sorry for my French pronunciations. I never took French. It's pretty obvious. The Tiger was what he was known as of France, but he once taught French in a girls' school, and here's another one about that. The reason is because he couldn't build up a profitable medical practice. So kind of a history or background on Georges Clemenceau, if I'm pronouncing it correct. Here, I'm going to massacre another one. Pierre Mendès France, arrested by the Vichy government here in World War II while awaiting trial, escaped from prison by means of a bedsheet rope. And I have some really cool letters here from the ambassador of France in 1955 and a whole biography of this really interesting politician and statesman from France. How about the French premier Edgar Faure? Received his bachelor's degree at the age of 15, was accepted at the bar when he was 19. Amazing. And the Pool Hall statesman, I love this one, Michel de Chamillard, Minister of Finance, Minister of State, Minister of War, and Controller General of France. He lived from 1652 to 1721, and apparently he won his offices from King Louis XIV by playing billiards. That's because he was so good at playing pool. That's how he got it. He was a favorite of Louis XIV because he possessed great skill in the game of billiards. And that was Louis, his favorite indoor pastime. And so great did the king consider Chamillard's skill that he was called the only man in France that could defeat the king at the game. Many said it was merely because others considered it bad taste to defeat the monarch, but Chamillard consistently won in appreciation of his skill. Louis appointed Chamillard Minister of Finance in 1695 and then made him minister of several other departments after that. And then a couple of going way back in history from Grandma Elsie, just about to wrap this up for this part of the episode. Cicero apparently kept a collection of prefaces, which he would then quickly attach to anything he wished to publish. A little secret there. And then Demosthenes, he was an outstanding Greek statesman, overcame social and physical handicaps, including an impediment to speech, and he was one of the greatest orators. Obviously better than me. I can't even say orator. The world has ever known. Overcame. My grandma loves stories of people who overcame handicaps and difficulties, but Demosthenes. And then the final one, Cardinal Richelieu. He was carried in his bed by guards when he traveled, and if necessary, the walls were knocked out of the houses so that he could pass through. That way he could be moved in without disturbance. Crazy known fact on Cardinal Richelieu. So that wraps up this portion of the episode, or the episodes, if you will, of European statesmen, not including British and Irish. Thank you for joining. If you like content like this, stories about history, personalities, nature, science, all of that, just tons of material here to get into. It's going to take me years to basically scan all the archives in, but I'll share the fascinating stories as I find them with you. So please leave a comment. I respond to all of them, and return next week. And before I go, I'll leave you, as I always do, with the quote by John Hicks at the beginning of his very first book in 1928. The author launches this book of the curious in nature and humankind on the vast sea of public opinion with the hope that it will fulfill its mission to entertain and acquaint its readers